Hello, this is my video on the good and the bad of every TCG. Now, there are plenty of TCGs out there. Many you've played yourselves, I'm sure, and some you still play to this very day. Though the common theme is every TCG has good parts of them and bad parts that make you want to stick or leave the game entirely. And that's kind of what I want to be discussing into this video. My experiences with a couple of TCGs and exactly what makes them good, fun to play, and what kind of makes them not. So, who am I? I'm someone who adores card games. I love card games. I've played a number of them, many of which I played just to get a feel of. Some I kind of was into casually, some I was into competitively, and there's a number of them I'm still into, like even today. So um, I was inspired to make this video after watching another YouTuber make videos on card games in a similar style named Soda TCG. Um, if you end up enjoying this video, you should totally check him out. He makes similar content and it's all great content. So without further ado, the first one I want to talk about is Pokemon. So what exactly is the good of Pokemon? Well, for one, Pokemon is very simple to learn. It's a card game where if you ever wanted to like slowly nudge your friends towards this hobby, or if someone you know already has an interest in getting into this hobby, Pokemon is definitely the easiest recommendation by a long shot. It's the kind of game that's so simple to learn. The text on the cards are almost always very short and they're straightforward, having very little edge cases and complex mechanics that players ever need to think of when starting off. I mean, for one, take a look at its Dragapult. It's a tier 1 meta deck that's incredibly good. And looking at it once, you can easily remember what it does. And though despite that, the game can definitely make way for great skill expression, despite it being very straightforward, which is kind of what the next point is, which is Pokemon does have a lot of skill expression. And part of that is kind of knowing your matchups. Once you see an opponent play down a specific card, you can get a good idea of what their game plan is, what the threats are to your deck, and how to play around it. Say you're playing Raging Bolt EX, like your deck is centered around Raging Bolt EX. Well, your main win condition is this Raging Bolt EX who specializes in just knocking out the opponent's active Pokemon in one hit. And you're playing against an opponent who is using Joltik Box. So they're using Joltik Box, and the deck plays around multiple electric Pokemon. You open up with Teal Mask Ogerpon, and by seeing this card alone, your opponent can instantly get a good assumption of what deck you're playing because there are a lot of Pokemon that kind of slot into just very specific decks. So your opponent sees this, they instantly search out their Pikachu EX, which has the Resolute Heart ability, making it survive with just 10 HP if they would ever get one-shotted. So with this, you can tell that they're centralizing their game plan around not letting you one-hit KO their Pikachu. Well, then you can take out Slitherwing, which deals massive damage to Pikachu and leaves it burned, meaning it will take the burn damage and get knocked out right after doing a big hit. And that's kind of how high level Pokemon plays look. They pivot the game plans almost instantly. Most importantly, they make sure what cards they're playing in what order, because there's a lot of things I'm not gonna go over, such as board states, hand states, prize card, race, and just well, there's a couple more. Though, just to keep this video simple, I just want to say that that is great skill expression despite how straightforward Pokemon is. So now you've probably heard this other factor multiple times. A Pokemon is super, super cheap to get into. It's kind of a meme I've heard within the TCG community where even Yu-Gi-Oh players, Magic players, they kind of make fun of the fact that Pokemon super cheap. You could, build a Pokemon deck with just a couple bucks, but the problem, I mean, not the problem, the truth is, they're right. Pokemon TCG is super cheap. It's one of the biggest selling points because hobbies are meant to be fun. Some hobbies can be expensive, which locks people out of them, and it's no surprise that card games as a hobby is incredibly expensive. So those who might have some interest will most likely look at the prices for some cards and just decide to not join the hobby because they realize they need a full deck of cards that will most likely be expensive, which kind of sucks because it's a great hobby. The games, depending on what game you play, you'll have a great time and you'll get to be part of a great community. So this is why this point kind of gets brought up all the time when talking about Pokemon. And if you do need solid proof that this game is cheap, there was a large Pokemon tournament recently in the EU called the EU International Championships 2026 London. Now there were 4,010 players in this tournament. And you know how much the winning deck costs in that tournament? The deck that won first place consists of cards that add up to $38, which is insane for a meta deck. So, well, other than that, the Pokemon company actually makes great starter content, which is, sorry, insane starter products. For example, what I showed here is the League Battle deck. This is the Dragapult League Battle deck. So they usually take decks that are super meta, like tier 1, tier 2 decks, and kind of sell it out there as a starter product. And it's not fully built, it's not 100% built, but it's like 70 to actually 80% there already. And you just need to put in a couple more cards, which is insane because the couple of cards you're going to put in are cards that aren't that expensive. This starter product already comes with a lot of the super expensive stuff. And this is what makes Pokemon so great for beginners. That's why beginners always enter Pokemon all the time because it's just so easy to start. It's also just super cheap, as well as it being Pokemon. It's a massive IP. It's just easy to get into because some people see their favorite Pokemon and they think, hey, uh, the game looks fun. I want to try it out. It's easy to just grab their favorite Pokemon and start playing. So, despite all this, Pokemon still has some bads, and part of this is, I guess, the game can come off as too simple or not exciting enough when compared to other card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or maybe Magic. It can definitely seem like Pokemon is too straightforward, with no way to interrupt your opponent during their turn. There's no flashy combos that lead to a board wipe, and Pokemon don't have long text boxes with multiple effects to trigger. Now, for people who are more casual, or for people who actually like this or just don't mind it, this is not exactly a downside, but I've definitely heard the same sentiment from multiple people saying they don't want to get into Pokemon specifically because this is just how it looks to them. It looks boring. It looks too easy, too simple. And that's kind of just a personal preference, which, it's fine if you feel that way. And yeah, this is really just a personal preference kind of thing. But another big factor is collecting is super expensive. Now, remember how I said that Pokemon is super easy and cheap to get into? The same doesn't really apply for if you're trying to collect because I mean, you've definitely heard of all the horror stories of how much some cards can cost. I mean, this Mega Gardevoir EX that I'm showing you right here, it can go up for like $160 because of specifically the art. And I've seen cards that go for near thousands. And let's just say, you're not even looking to collect specific special arts like this one. You just want to collect singles, sorry, you just want to collect packs or just get it to open. Well, packs can be super hard to find. I mean, for example, this prismatic evolutions came out, and for one, it was absurdly expensive. But if you were in a position to actually buy that, that would be kind of lucky because for the most part, you couldn't even find these packs anywhere. It's the same problem over and over again. Scalpers are the main issue. I know pretty much every card game has this whole scalper issue, but Pokemon is definitely one of the more egregious ones. Scalpers are just everywhere, and it's super hard to get packs and products a lot of the time because of these scalpers. Now, moving on to the next card game is Yu-Gi-Oh! I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I've never really played Yu-Gi-Oh! in in real life, the actual trading card game, but I've played a crap ton of Master Duels. Like I have over 200 hours on Master Duels, and I do enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! So one of the reasons why I really like it is because of the resource system, or more so the lack of a resource system. So other games generally have a resource system to keep the game balanced. This way, most cards can like the big strong cards can't be played early on. They have to be played later into the game, and they have to be built up towards. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's no resource system. The only limit is the fact that you can only normal summon once a turn. But that alone is not enough to stop the onslaught of effects that will happen from playing just a singular card. And a lot of decks don't even have to normal summon to get a big combo going. They can just activate a spell in hand, and massive monsters now can just sorry, many monsters can just special summon themselves for a very low cost. And it's gotten to the point where, when a card is designed, it will be stated on the card itself that its effects can only be used once a turn. And this makes the game insanely exciting, creating a long combo which leads to an end board in a single turn that usually takes multiple turns to set up in other card games. And it's a joke within the card game community that at that point you're basically playing solitaire. But honestly, it's so satisfying to pull off, and the game has reached a point where they kind of embrace this chaos and create counterplay by having cards that the community calls hand traps. So I just realized I am quite behind on the slides. But here you go, hand traps. For example, this Molcharmi hand trap uh, punishes players for continuously special summoning. And this is kind of just what Yu-Gi-Oh has been doing, creating more and more hand traps to stop these onslaught of effects going off, non-stop special summoning, big combos, because they do encourage these long combo chains as well, or at least I'm pretty sure they do with how their cards are designed. For example, this K9 Izuna, the card that summons themselves for free. Yeah, she can summon herself literally during your opponent's turn, which leads to a long combo chain, and you could probably create an end board during your opponent's turn because of her, which is cool. And another reason I actually do love Yu-Gi-Oh is its massive variety with all the archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh. So I love how they follow certain themes. There is an archetype that's a parody of Star Wars called Cosmo. There's an archetype where the cards are themed after puppets and marionettes called Shadow. This one is really cool. And the next one is my personal favorite, the Yummy cards, which are themed after cats and sweets. They're all so adorable. They look like as we've got guys like Cupsy Yummy, Marshmallow Yummy, Lollipop Yummy. They're basically just what if cats were chibi and we made them into candy. It's adorable. It is my personal favorite. Um, you'll probably like Yu-Gi-Oh too if you're kind of like me, is someone who just enjoys learning a card game that requires a lot of skill and knowledge. And I know this can actually be considered a bad thing, that it requires a lot of, learning, requires a lot of skill and knowledge. The ceiling floor is actually quite high to just get into Yu-Gi-Oh, but sometimes um, that can be kind of cool. But then again, that's a personal preference, and I think that's just me. I mean, there seem to be cards that make even judges confused on how they're supposed to work. But aside from that, the game itself is great. I mean, it's been out for 20 years, I think, over 20. I'm not too sure, but it's 20 years of power creep. And overall, the thing that makes Yu-Gi-Oh so good is the fact that it's such a unique experience. You've maybe heard this from other content creators, maybe other TCG players, but if you if you pick this game up and pick a deck, you need to really learn how the combos of that deck works and know what you're working towards. I've played custom matches against bots so many times just so I can practice my combos, which is something that usually fighting game players do. And this game does have that sentiment of it's actually a lot like a fighting game, despite it being a card game. And if you watch other creators, you've probably heard them say a similar thing because honestly, it really is like that. And something you just need to experience to know how unique Yu-Gi-Oh is within the card game space. But of course, this game has a lot of bads. Uh, I'm probably shortlisting. I'm probably like not listing most of them because I know the Yu-Gi-Oh community hates their game more than the non-Yu-Gi-Oh community. For one, there's so much text. I'm showing you this card. If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you're probably tired of seeing these pendulum monsters used as an example for whenever someone talks about how Yu-Gi-Oh is having way too much text. But so fine. I prepared another one. Here's a non-pendulum monster. So while Dracotail Arthelion doesn't have as much text as Nirvana Eye Paladin, it doesn't change the fact that there is a lot of text in just that one card, and you will have many cards with almost that same length of text, most likely more, and you have to remember all these texts on each card so you know what they do. And I know the common thing to say is just read the card. Yes, you're right. New players should just read the cards. But have you considered there's a reason why they don't want to? So here's a picture of Dragapult again. And both Dragapult and Arthelion are included in the best decks of their respective games. And just from this a simple glance, you can take a good guess at which card is easier to play and just easier to remember. One game of Dragapult and you have a good idea of what the deck is supposed to do. Many games with Arthalion and you'll learn for sure, but will still have many questions unless you're a veteran at the game, because once you've played a lot, you'll develop the skill to just skip certain lines of text that you know don't need to be there. But that's a thing I've always heard. Some high level players, some people that just tell new players to just read the text, they keep saying that play enough and read enough, you'll learn to just skim through some of these texts. But if you can skip it because you know it's just there to lengthen the paragraph, why is it there in the first place? Why not just replace it with an icon or a keyword? Many other games like Magic and Hearthstone use keywords. I just think it will make the game way less daunting to look at, which will then help new players want to actually play it. And that's the other thing, is the fact that this game is not new player friendly at all. So, like I said, it's absolutely daunting to get into. Honestly, I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that's the hardest to get new players into because of just how much you need to know about the game. Normal summoning is very simple. Place a card down, done, you've normal summoned. Okay, well then there's XYZ summoning. Still very simple. You just need to take two cards of the same level and special summon an XYZ monster from your extra deck with the same level as those two monsters, and just like put them beneath this XYZ card. Simple enough. Well, then there's synchro summoning, where you send a tuner and a non-tuner monster equal to that where the levels are equal to that of the monster you're trying to special summon. Then there's link summoning, where you send the monsters from your field to the graveyard as material and link summon um, a monster from the extra deck whose link rating is equal to the amount of monsters used as material, which, yeah, then you have fusion, you have ritual, you have pendulum. There's just so much to remember for a new player. And that's the problem. For one, you already have to remember what each card does with their long text. And next, you have to remember how all these different special summonings work, like how to actually summon them. Then you haven't even gotten down to combos for your deck, because every deck functions, differently in what they're trying to achieve, I guess. I mean, some decks are definitely similar in what they're trying to achieve, but the the combos are definitely different because different monsters and such, which takes a lot of practice. And all this is just way too much for a new player. I've definitely been in that situation where I picked up Yu-Gi-Oh a while back after like not playing it for a while. I tried learning it again, and I had fun most of the time, but there were some times where I was just like, what is the point? Why am I learning so much? Like, am I even enjoying this that much? But yeah, that's that's definitely one of the bads of Yu-Gi-Oh! Another thing is it's very hard to watch unless you're someone who's super into the game and know what each card does in the meta, in all these meta decks and a few decks. It's not at all easy to follow um on like what's going on in a game if you're a new player. The game is just super fast, and the amount of combos and interactions are crazy. Card effects, they trigger left and right, and unless you actually know what these cards do, you're most likely going to get lost. And well, just to be clear, I do love Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a card game that really is unique from the rest. But I think the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bads are the most glaring, especially when compared to Pokemon, and just the most glaring bads among a large majority of the card games. But next up is Riftbound. So this is a new card game that kind of came out quite recently. Personally, I love the League IP. I used to play so much League when I was in high school, and I loved looking up the lore of a bunch of characters. Though I don't play League anymore, I'm still a big fan of these characters, the world building, and the lore. So the moment I heard that League was getting a card game, I got very excited because I'm a nerd who loves card games. and I love the league. So, big hype moment. And the game does have a lot of goods. For one, I do really like the mana system in this game. It follows a similar mana system to Magic the Gathering, where you have an area where you play your quote unquote lands. Or in this game, they're not called lands, they're called runes. I think they're called runes. But however, unlike MTG, the runes aren't part of your main deck. They are in their own separate deck that's placed on the side of the board. So, and you get like two runes every turn, but the player going second gets three runes. Sorry, I accidentally moved on to the next slide. Oops. And I really like, however, I really like Magic. However, the mana system in that game tends to really mess up your matches. Some games you draw too much land. Some games you don't draw into any at all. However, in Riftbound, you get a set amount of runes every turn, so you never get mana screwed. And though that doesn't mean you will always play your cards on curve, because lots of cards require you to not only tap runes to play them, but also recycle those runes. And recycling is the action of taking a rune that's on your board and placing it to the bottom of the rune deck. So that means you won't start off the game with a small amount of runes. Sorry, you will start the game with a smaller amount of runes, and as the game progresses, if you're not managing your recycling properly, you could still have a small amount of runes on your, well, rune pool compared to your opponent, which is kind of really cool in my opinion. It's kind of resource management. It's new to me, but I'm not too sure if any other card game has this mechanic. This is my first one. This is my first card game that I've played with this specific kind of recycling mechanic, and I just think it's sick. And next part is battlefields. This is definitely what makes Pokemon. Sorry, I meant a Riftbound. This is definitely what makes a Riftbound good as well. Are the battlefields. These battlefields, they add some good variety into the game and even into deck building. Because like having these different battlefields, you can choose ones that help out your deck during deck building, or that just add another layer of depth to your deck, especially when you start playing and fighting for these battlefields. Your strategy can change depending on what's in play. So, for example, you're in a game and your you have the Ravenbloom Conservatory battlefield out, and if you went first, you would normally start off by having the first point, and with that in mind, you would want to just keep defending this battlefield since you have the point advantage. However, what if your opponent is playing a battlefield called the Grand Plaza? Suddenly things change. You're no longer put in a position where pouring a bunch of resources into defending the Ravenbloom Conservatory will instantly win you the game, because that will take a couple of turns to build up, where your opponent just needs one turn when they have 7 or more units on the Grand Plaza and they can just instantly win. And I think these battlefields are really cool. They're just, well, a great addition to the game. And not only that, but my next point is that I love that when Riftbound was being made, they put into consideration not just the 1v1 format, but also a 2v2 and free for all kind of mode, which is kind of what Magic has, if I'm correct. They have the Commander format, but Riftbound kind of released that with the game, and the cards were printed with these two other modes in mind. and it really helps bring new players in because I have some friends who don't really want to get into a new card game, but like the moment they heard that Riftbound has a 2v2 and free for all mode releasing with it, they got super excited to start playing the game. And honestly, why shouldn't they be? As far as I'm aware, the only other card game that actually supports a format where four players sit down and play cards against each other is Magic's Commander mode. So to have a new card game that gives this option is amazing. And since the game has come out very recently, I guess that is part of the reason why that's definitely part of the reason why they release this kind of another format, because they have all this data and they know that people from Magic love Commander, so they release their own Commander-like mode. And that's just great. And I hope the game continues to expand upon its good. So, despite that, they definitely have their own bads. For one, this is my biggest gripe with Riftbound. Their main issue is, I think, the card erratas are horrendous. Like, oh my god, the card erratas, there's so many. So when the game was released, if I'm correct, there's 30 cards that were errated. This is one of the errated cards, Tide Turner. So I'll tell you my story of like how it all went down for me. So I live in Malaysia. It's a country where right now Riftbound really isn't in our country yet because um, card stores haven't gotten access to it, and I really want to play with my friends. So we all printed proxies of certain decks we wanted, and I had to look up videos, guides, and even download the PDF rulebook of Riftbound and do a lot of reading to just understand how this game was supposed to work. So Tide Turner, my deck plays Tide Turner. It has this hidden keyword, and all you need to know about the hidden keyword is that it just means this card can be placed face down like a trap card, but only onto a battlefield you control. And when it reveals itself, it gets played, so its trigger effect lets you swap its place with another unit, specifically Titan, I mean, because hidden cards, when you play them onto a battlefield, you play them face down like a trap card, and then you can just use them as a reaction spell, essentially. And Titan says that when it's used that way, you can choose a friendly unit and move me to its location and move it to my location. Then I looked at this and I was a bit confused because if I remember correctly, there's a rule that states that when a hidden card is played from the hidden state, I can't choose any other location as a target. I can't choose a target from another location, is what I'm trying to say. So I can only choose a target on Tide Turner's location, which doesn't make sense because if I'm choosing a target on Tide Turner's location, then how are they swapping locations? It doesn't make sense at all. So when I went home, I looked it up, and turns out that the Riftbound website actually mentioned this card, stating that it was an errata and that its actual effect is here, right here. Basically, the actual effect is supposed to be worded in a way where it kind of bypasses that hidden rule. And that's another thing that I dislike, is that why wasn't that rule about how hidden cards are played, why isn't it part of the card text here? Why do I have to actually look it up? So it's just horrendous. It's kind of like they're treating this as if it was a digital card game, because Titan is not the only card that got errata. There are so many cards that got errata, especially when the second set came out. They actually even released more card erratas for the first set, if I'm correct, which just baffles me because it really does seem like they're treating this as if it's some sort of online card game where they can just manually put out updates. And I really hope they don't continue to do this. I'm sure they won't. I'm very sure they won't. But the fact that they already did this on release, this short into the game's lifespan is really not that great. So yeah, I went on for quite a bit for about the card erratas, but another thing is Riftbound, similar to Pokemon, it's impossible to get products. Like generally, unless you live in a country like America or China, there's a high chance products don't even exist in your country. Or at least for me, there's no local game stores that I know that have any Riftbound products. And when I ask them if they know any other game stores that have these products, everyone just says, no, we don't really know any card stores here in this country that even has Riftbound products, which is kind of what led to me and my friends printing out proxies for these cards so we can play them. And of course, I'm not blaming these local card stores. Apparently, the product is just way too expensive for them to afford. That even if they sell a lot of the Rift Brown products, the amount these card stores had to pay to even get these products in the first place is so baffling that there's a good chance they don't earn any profits because that's generally just how expensive it was to even start selling. And if you live in a country that even has these products, like America and China, I'm not saying you have it great because I hear horror stories about how cards can go up to like $50, decks going up to thousands. I mean, on release, the card Dazzling Aurora was around $50, and I actually checked recently. I hope this is not the actual price, but apparently 100, which is nuts. And you have to play like what, three copies of this in a deck. So if it actually is $100, that's $300 for three cards, and you haven't built the rest of your deck. Absolutely wild. Just wow. And it's not like, this product issue is a thing for people who just want to play either. I hear about how bots are buying boxes of products 5 minutes before they're even released. Yeah, that's right. Somehow people have found a way to make bots that literally scalp products before they even hit the market. So if you're looking to get a booster pack for fun, I kind of wish you the best of luck. But yeah, that's kind of as many card games as I'm going to put into this one video. I had a couple of more niche card games like Cardfight Vanguard and Shadowverse World Beyond and even Digimon actually. But um I mean I've played others as well like Magic and Hearthstone. The problem is I just haven't played enough of some of these card games to really, you know, make a full proper video or just include them in here. I feel like if I were to do that, they would be in their own video titled something like a new player's experience on these card games. And specifically for Vanguard and Shadowverse, they're a lot more niche, which is why I didn't really put them in here. But yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. And anyways, thanks for watching. Okay, bye bye.